All right, fans are heavily calling out LIV's point system after we saw Jon Rahm take home the overall individual title with an $18 million fat paycheck without winning even once this season. You compare that, of course, to Joaquín Niemann, who had a dominant season, winning 5 times, and yet he does not take the overall title. So it is not just the PGA Tour who's having some controversy around its playoff system. But even though the PGA Tour has made changes, there is definitely some question marks still there, with guys like Rory McIlroy saying that the format is not quite fixed with this new resolution that we have as we watch the Tour Championship play out this week. There are, however, a number of people who've got some very good ideas of how we can fix this. So what we're going to do is we're going to break this down. We're going to see what the players are saying, what the fans are saying, and we're going to really dive into some of the issues faced both in LIV and the PGA Tour, with both of them really still having a broken strategy when it comes to their playoff structures. And we're going to talk about how it can be fixed. Of course, first we want to thank this week's sponsor, Titleist. And guys, if you haven't tried the new Titleist T-series irons, you haven't tried the hottest irons of the year yet. We recently had the opportunity to go and get fit, and the new T100s, T150s, T250s, and T350s are amazing. And what I think is most exciting about these for golfers like us is how well the sets now blend together, not only in feel, but also in looks. They are so well blended, and if you put yourself in the hands of a proper fitter, you can really start to understand how you can combine these, the new T-series lineup to make the perfect bag, the perfect fit for you. I now have a T150s and 250s blend in the bag. Mike is hitting the T350s, which are just ball speed monsters. And on top of all that, Titleist has introduced a brand new fitting system, which allows their fitters to get you even more dialed by adjusting all of your lofts and lies right on the fly, allowing you to test and feel them there in the fitting. So if you haven't get fit yet, definitely go out there, get that done. Go to the Titleist website. There's a spot where you can go right there, sign up for a fitting, go and experience them through a fitting, and you will get the most juice out of that squeeze. So go and check them out, Titleist.com. Make it a point to get fit before this season is over, and trust me, you will not be looking back. All right, so Mike, the headline grabber, of course, was Jon Rahm coming out, winning that $18 million overall individual champion, when everyone would think, when you've got a guy who won 5 times a season in Joaquín Niemann, that he's a lock. Did shock a lot of people.
It totally did. And I tuned in to LIV Sunday. I wanted to check it out. It was exciting because they had the points on the screen. So this is something that they do, showing like each stroke, each birdie, each par. Basically, they were just going back and forth. So it created a little bit of drama. It's what you want as a golf fan. So I kind of applaud LIV for doing that. I bet they didn't plan it like that, but it's awesome for them that it worked out like that, right?
Right.
But the fact that a guy who won 5 times doesn't win the $18 million to a guy who's won no times. You look at the math, right? It's all math. We looked at it. I mean, just Rahm got hot at the right times towards the end of the year. There's a lot of T2 finishes up there. I think he finished in the top 10 in every start, if I'm correct. Whereas Niemann fell off. I think towards the end, he had a couple of like 20 plays, finished 23rd, 33rd, whatever the case may be. I get some of those wrong, but you get what I'm saying. So I don't know. As the fan, you're looking at it from like way back and you're like, wait, how did this guy win and this guy didn't?
Yeah.
But then you say, it's math, but to that math, is the point system broken? Is it wrong?
Right. And that's what we'll do. In a second, we'll pull up on the screen the exact breakdown. Rahm had one tied for 11th finish, but otherwise, I mean, when your worst finish of the year is tied for 11th, you know you're putting together a pretty good season. But it didn't even quite sit right with Jon Rahm. And when he was asked, and you know, these guys are competitors. They don't want to feel like anything was kind of given to them or in any way. Like it's hard to say it that way because the reality is, it is math. Everyone knew the points going in. Everyone had the same chances to win points. But I think from a pure competitor standpoint, it's not going to always sit right with you when you win the overall title and you didn't win any tournaments that year. Right. So when he was asked, Jon Rahm said, to be able to win the season without actually winning a tournament, I know eventually I'll be proud of that. Right now, it's slightly more something I'm going to suffer over a bit more. And it may never be replicated. He goes on to say, you need a lot of coincidences to go on exactly with the year Joaquín had. He's won 5 times. He's played incredible golf. One could argue he's probably the more deserving guy to win this. But we have the point system that we have, and somehow, I don't know how, I managed to pull through and get it done. So you could tell a little bit of remorse in there of him saying, like, I feel like I kind of took this away from Niemann because of the season he had. But I want to, like I said, look at like the subtle things in there that could indicate a big change. One is him saying it may never be replicated. And, you know, going on and saying like, you know, we have the point system we have now. I think both of those indicate to me that the writing's on the wall. And LIV is still, like we've said before, early stages. The one thing I will commend them on is that they've found ways to adapt quickly when something's not working. I think like the TGL in its first season, the hammer wasn't working. And right in the middle of the season, they changed the rules around the hammer to make it more competitive. Exactly. So I think not being stuck in your ways is something that these leagues need to be able to have in order to adapt on the fly. But what he's saying is that effectively, I don't feel great about not winning the season, still winning the overall title. But again, math is math. Also, it's also worth pointing out that even dating back to before the season started, the beginning of the year in 2025, there were people who were saying that, hey, we still have problems with this LIV scoring system. It's broken. There's just not enough separation. So let's take a look at that. So first of all, if you look at, and I'll put it up here on the screen if you guys are watching on YouTube. If you're tuning in, you know, just hearing this, I will say the overall, if you look at the chart, is that Jon Rahm was Mr. Consistent, right?
No doubt.
So worst finish was a tied for 11th, but he had, I think, 4 either individual solo seconds or tied for second finishes. Lots of top 5s. I mean, just consistently gearing up and having points. Niemann, on the other side, was a little feast or famine. He did have the 5 wins, but he also had 2 tied for 33rd finishes, 2 tied for 23rd. He had a lot of these way down on the leaderboard, which, if you look at the LIV point system, really gives you very little.
Very little.
So there were plenty of weeks where Rahm was steadily, taking in 15 to 20 points, and Niemann might have only taken home
0.8 or something.
Yeah,
like not
a
even
point
one
that week, right? So the issue that many have pointed out with this system is that there's just not enough of a heavy weighting on a win. There's not enough of a points differential between first and second place. There's only a 10-point differential there.
It's wild.
Right? Yeah. And if you compare that to some of the other leagues that are out there, for example, the PGA Tour, I believe there's a 67% difference between the number of FedEx Cup points assigned to first place and second place. Even in the majors, there's a 50% difference between first and second place. So what that really does is it still rewards, it's still an accomplishment to finish, second place or top 5, but there needs to be something for that standout winner. And LIV just seemingly hasn't gotten it figured out yet.
No, they haven't. And I'm curious to know if the money differential is the same percentage between first and second. It's 4 million and then 2.25 million for second place. I don't know what the percentage math is there. Does that relate? You guys get your calculators.
50%. I mean, that sounds like sounds like it's more equitable on the money line than it does on the points line.
It's better to win. On the points line, it's not that much better.
Right.
Yeah.
But we're talking about something that really needs to be gotten right, because it's not only the title of being the individual winner, but when you're putting a price tag on it, a paycheck of $18 million.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Now, there's nobody between Niemann and Rahm, there's nobody there who's hurting for money. These guys have made significant, in fact, I think we were, run through the numbers, and Niemann had made more, on course earnings this year than Scotty Scheffler.
Yep.
So they're bringing in a ton of money, but it still matters to these guys, and it seems like a simple fix. So I would be shocked if we head into 2026 without a pivot and a reshuffling of the individual points to make a little bit more of a benefit, where you don't have the egg on your face of having a 5-time individual winner not take home the title, especially to lose the title to a guy who didn't win at all this year.
Right. And we're going to talk in a second about the PGA Tour, but the PGA Tour has a top prize for most points gone to Scotty and a tour championship for another 8. So there's 2.
Right.
Okay.
Which I think in part has helped alleviate some of the pressure on the PGA Tour side, alleviate some of the pressure on the format of the FedEx Cup playoffs. Because now what they did with Scotty, with awarding him as the points leader at the end of the regular season, you then have it where the guy who did all the work, through the bulk of the season, who wins them, at the majority of the points, doesn't go home empty-handed. Because as much as the chances of a player that hot being eliminated quickly from the playoffs are slim, they're not nothing. So you could have had a player who was dominant all season, makes it to the playoffs, and then drops out and doesn't win the tour championship and has nothing really to show for it.
Yep.
At least, even if Scotty, who, by the way, it's just it's a topic for a whole other time, but he's unstoppable. So the BMW.
Yeah.
I looked at the leaderboard on Saturday, and I'm just like, oh, if Scotty's within 4 strokes, it's over. It's his.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
He only needs to be close.
Absolutely.
If Scotty's within, what's his differential at this point? 6?
Right. Because he's so consistent that even though he's behind, he will always creep up leaderboards.
Yeah.
So you in front of him cannot make mistakes.
Absolutely cannot.
That's the hard part, being the other players.
He's eliminated anyone's ability to make any type of a mistake or fumble whatsoever.
Right.
But I digress. The reality is, like I said, going back, at least the PGA Tour has come up with something to reward the guy who's the end of the season before we head into the playoffs. That's a good point to shift gears. Now let's talk about the FedEx Cup playoffs, which this year has had a significant change based on the feedback of both players and fans, who I don't think it ever sat well with anyone of having the final round, the tour championship, having that points lead, having a guy who's starting whatever 10 under. And we've explained it here in the podcast. I think that the fan that you need to appeal to are the casual viewers, right? That's Definitely. I think you're going to still have the diehards like us who are going to watch everything all the time, no matter what. But to really keep your numbers up, it's the casual viewers. Yep. And it's never sat right with me to have a system that is too complex that I can't explain 100%. It in a second to somebody who's sitting next to me. He's not a golf watcher, but we're at a party on Sunday and someone's got the TV on and be like, hey, how's this work?
Yeah.
It needs to be explained in a second, and you start like, well, this guy starts with a lead.
I know.
It never sat well with me, and I think that's why we saw the change.
Yeah, what would you rather have as the casual fan? Scotty down 3 on a Sunday or Scotty up 10 on a Thursday?
Right.
I'm like, this is over before it starts.
Yeah, and then viewership is going to be out the door with that. But there was merit to it. And Rory McIlroy, he's quoted this week, he brings up, a point that kind of solidifies and shows that. So what Rory said, maybe I'm part of the minority, but I didn't hate the starting strokes. I thought that the player that played the best during the course of the season should have had an advantage coming in here. Mm-hmm. But the majority of people just didn't like the starting strokes. Mm-hmm. He said, look, there was a lot of other stuff on the table. Match play was on the table, and that got canned for this year. That might be brought back up in the conversation for next year or the year after. I think it's just hard for the players to reconcile that we play stroke play for every week of the year, but then the season-ending tournament is going to be decided by match play. I think it's just hard for the players to get their head around that. So put a pin on that, because we're going to come back in a second. We're going to talk about some solutions that have been proposed that would include match play, but not necessarily be match play being all of it, which I think is a great suggestion. But it's interesting, too, that Rory's bringing it up like for this year. It sounds like match play in some capacity is inevitable based on the way he's speaking. But going back to the most important point of where we got there, Rory is saying that it does, again, it comes back to what we said before, where it seems tough for a guy to have a great overall season and not have anything to show for it in the playoffs.
Yeah.
But interesting thing we started talking about before the show, in other sports, like football, you can have a fantastic season.
Yeah.
And what are you going to get? At most, you get a bye in the first week of the playoffs, right? You get a bye.
You get a little bit, yep.
But that's kind of built in to golf already. Look at Rory, who had a lot of his own criticism for sitting out
Taking
the first
off week
week.
one.
Right.
Which is on, you could take it off, I think.
But when he's accrued as many points as he has, he's got enough of a lead, he kind of creates his own bye. So it's not like he comes out of his fantastic season with nothing to show for it. Right?
Yeah, to your point there, I don't think that anyone's going to agree that the New England Patriots should have had a 24-point head start in the 2007 Super Bowl against the Giants. Right. Clean slate. Giants won it. They were the best of the season, even though they were 10-6. And the Pats were 19-0 with their playoff wins. Same concept, right? But the funny thing about Rory, and it's like a love-hate. Sometimes I love the guy. Sometimes I can't stand him. And that's just, part of being a fan, I guess, is he walked it back and he said, well, I've never, ever been in the position where I got the 10 starting strokes. So this is kind of a relief for me to come in on a clean, slate.
Yeah.
Right? He might have
very much
changed
speak his mind, kind of got stream of consciousness.
He definitely speaks his mind. But it's an interesting point. Like, okay, now you got guys coming in, clean slate this week to Eastlake, right? And kicking off tomorrow. And then you got a guy, and I don't want to call it a guy, but then I'm going to try to pick the most no-name guy in the field, a guy like Harry Hall, right?
Right.
Played exceptionally well this year. He's the guy who wears those old-school Bryson caps,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Here's a guy who has no wins, PGA Tour this year, no second-place finishes. I think he had like 5 top 10s, right? And here he is. He grinded. He got hot when he needed to, and he made it to Eastlake. So his future next year, it's all set up for him. That's another perk. You make it to Eastlake. You make it to top 50. You're good. Signature events, all that stuff. But here's a guy who can go out, and Scotty could not be, his flat stick could be quiet this week. Harry Hall could be hot, and Harry Hall could be our season-long winner.
That's the thing. He's a
Good
situation where he absolutely could.
Got hot at the right time.
Exactly. And part of what playoffs are getting hot at the right time.
That's it.
Now, granted, the odds of him winning are very slim,
Right.
Look, it's not a lock for Scotty, right? There's still a lot of guys who come out. I could see, it would be a fantastic story. I could see Tommy Fleetwood winning this thing.
That'd be a great story.
Right? Would it be an incredible story?
Wants to see.
And there's a certain degree where it's very hard to balance like kind of what should be the inevitable versus what, you know what I'm saying? Like, because it's not good for viewership either if Scotty's got, as you said, a huge lead coming into it. So I think there has to be a certain degree of wiping that slate clean and allowing that. I think it's just, there's a certain amount where both fans, and you guys can weigh in the comments, let us know what your own thoughts are on this, but where fans and other players might feel in a way gypped to see, as you said, like Harry Hall win the Tour Championship.
Mm-hmm.
When you had Scotty had the season he had. And this is where we might run into the same problem that we see with LIV.
Yeah, exactly.
But at the end of the day, it's the points are not shifted throughout the season. They're laid out early. Like everybody's playing under the same rules.
Right.
And I think there needs to be a certain degree of that because we don't argue this in something like football, as you said, where it's just like, it's really just been play well enough to get into the playoffs.
Yeah.
And once you're in the playoffs, if you get hot at the right time, you could win the Super Bowl like the Giants did that year.
Yeah.
So there's a certain degree of like, there's going to be that inevitability. I do think though that as much as it's a better format that we see this year in that we're not starting, because we definitely were not fans of the starting strokes.
Yeah, no.
I think that we've got the 3 playoff events. You do have guys you drop out based on their finishes, for the 50 and then 30. You've got that baked in.
Yep.
So you can't completely coast.
Yep.
You do have baked in that you have a certain amount of FedEx Cup points coming into it, so you can be a guy like Rory and you can skip the first week and create your own bye, and that's your reward for playing so well. But then at the very end, it comes down to that Tour Championship, and the winner's the winner, because I think one of the biggest, most confusing, and nobody really liked the icky feeling of you had one guy won the Tour Championship and one guy won the FedEx Cup.
I hated that.
And 2 different trophies. And
you're like, what happened?
And I felt like the guy who won the Tour Championship, if he didn't also win the FedEx Cup, was kind of overshadowed in his big win.
Yeah.
And it was just like, it never really sat well with fans.
It never really sat well. But, I think relating it to that same football analogy, if you make it to the Tour Championship, that is the Super Bowl. Whether it's 2 teams playing heads up or 30 guys going at each other. I feel like if you were good enough to get to Eastlake, which is no easy accomplishment at all, you'd have to have a pretty stellar season, then I think any one of these 30 guys, can be considered the best or the champion of the year. Player of the year is a different story. That's going to Scotty hands down. And everyone knows that. Right. I know it's like always a debate between 1 or 2 guys. It's probably him and Rory. Rory's got the Players and the Masters. But I think Scotty's got it. I think that's a lock. But as far as this season-long race, any of these 30,
As I said before, I think we've already definitely got a more watchable event because we're not coming in with this. If Scotty coming into this with a huge stroke lead, there's no doubt in my mind that it would have hurt viewership.
Yeah, totally.
Scott, I may, you get guys who say, I may tune in Sunday just to see where he's at, but with Scotty with that big of a lead, it's over. You're going to hear people say that.
Yeah.
And it would require a miracle Cinderella story comeback from someone else to make it watchable. Now, at least you say, okay, we've narrowed it down to the best 30 guys, let them go at it, and the winner takes all.
Yeah.
So I think it's strong, but it's still not without criticism, and there's still some ways that it can be made better. And I found a great suggestion that we want to kind of play here and react to. Let's do a quick word from our sponsor. We'll do a break here. We'll come back and we'll do that.
All right. As we know, the golf season is in full swing, and Footjoy, of course, they've got you covered with everything from the latest performance footwear as well as their golf apparel. Now, they have everything you need, guys, from shoes, socks, belts, all the accessories. But let's talk about the footwear. Premier Series, the Hyperflex, even these Quantums I'm wearing right here. Incredible shoes, both on and off course. And their apparel. They've got things for every single weather condition. It's crazy. Monsoon, they have stuff, incredible rain jackets that you will never get wet. I promise you, wearing them all the way down to gloves and things to keep you warm as the winter. I don't even want to say it, but as it approaches. So if you're obsessed with golf, just like us, you have to trust Footjoy. They've been doing it for over 100 years. These guys know what they're doing, and they're the best in the game. So trust your game with the latest from Footjoy. Learn more at footjoy.com.
All right. So before we play out this possible solution, I think one important thing here to understand, and I think was something that's addressed really well. This comes from Sean Zach from golf.com, Golf Magazine. Who has, again, working in the industry, has an intimate knowledge of this. And I think he addressed something that's so important, which is just how many stakeholders there are to not only to try to get this right for all of them, but to make everyone happy. Because I think there are certain paths that you could take with a playoff structure that would make the players happy. There's certain paths that might make the fans happy. But there's things you need to think about. There's the sponsors. Now, think about this. The FedEx Cup, we're playing for $40 million this week at the Tour Championship. Someone foots that bill, right? So you got to do something that's going to make FedEx happy. And FedEx is not going to be happy with poor ratings on their big end of season cap. These are the biggest sponsor, in golf, as Sean puts it.
Although they shout FedEx all season.
Sure.
Their season-long FedEx. Yes, they get that, but I see what you're saying.
But when you have your FedEx Cup and no one's not tuning in, that's important. So there's those stakeholders. There's also the stakeholders of the broadcasters, who some have pushed back before and said that broadcasters don't like match play, and that's part of why that doesn't come into play. I would push back and say, I don't know if I necessarily believe that's true. I still think there's a huge hole in the schedule to do some match play since we got rid of the WGC, which was played out in Austin, which was match play. And you're seeing growth of viewership on things like the US Amateur and some of these other, non-professional events that use match play and are electric at time. I'm even thinking the NCAA championship.
Love it. So good.
And there's a degree that match play can still pull those ratings. So here's what I'll do. I'll play for you exactly in his words. There's a whole great article if you want to read it more in depth of Sean, goes into how this is format, but he also posted this on Instagram. Let me let that play out and then we'll kind of react to it. He's going to say exactly how he thinks the playoff structure could be fixed, specifically talking about the last event of the season, the Tour Championship and its structure. So here's that.
We've got some boxes that need to get checked. Tour's obsessed with having 30 players get to the final tournament, and the players are obsessed with playing stroke play. So we're going to check both those boxes. We're going to appease them with 36 holes, first 2 rounds, stroke play. That's how we are trimming the herd. After 2 rounds, the top 2 people on the leaderboard, they're advancing to the quarterfinals. Last year, that was Colin Morikawa and Scotty Scheffler. After that, the top 14 are making the cut. That's your standard cut size on the PGA Tour. And you know who likes cuts almost as much as me? The good people at NBC. Why? Because Thursday, people are tuning in to see who's going to get that bye. On Friday in primetime, people are tuning in. Who's going to get cut? Whose season is actually over with? And you know what we get in primetime? We probably get some playoffs. Then it's on to match play Saturday. And before anybody can tell me, oh, we don't want match play, TV executives don't want match play on the weekend, we actually asked Sam Flood, the executive producer at NBC, are you all cool with match play? And he said, yeah, I've literally been in conversations with the tour. We're okay with match play, particularly in the playoffs. So match play Saturday, 8 plays 9 for the right to play 1, 4 plays against 13, 5 plays against 12. Let's add some names and faces to those numbers. Suddenly you've got Tommy Fleetwood advancing to play Xander Schauffele, who, winner of those, goes on to play against Collin Morikawa and Scottie Scheffler. That's good for business. And what awaits those guys at the end of match play Saturday is something that you can also trademark. You can also have sponsored. It's the Sunday shootout. Stroke play, match play, shootout. 4 players who have advanced. You've gone through it all. It's the last 4. On Sunday, you're playing 18 holes. Lowest man wins. It's an actual shootout. How many birdies can you make? How many pars can you grind out? And you know who benefits from that is this slowly building playoffs? The people who sponsor the playoffs. FedEx Cup, right? FedEx, the most important sponsor in all of pro golf. Their playoffs would actually be a playoffs. You would go from 70 to 50 to 30 to 14 to 8 to 4 and eventually to 1. And of course, we have not forgotten about the fans. The final check on our list, the fans matter, and just to sell the fans on it a little bit more. I took the scores from last year at East Lake. We're trying to make this as real as possible. The people who would have advanced to the Final Four, the Sunday shootout, it's Collin Morikawa playing some of the best golf of his life. It's Scottie Scheffler, the most inevitable golfer we've seen since Tiger. It's calm, cool, collected Xander Schauffele playing the best golf of his life. And it's fiery Wyndham Clark trying to ruin everybody's part. You telling me you wouldn't tune in for that?
So interesting there. Again, like I said, and it's hard to disagree with him in a lot of ways. You guys can let us know in the comments whether you agree or disagree with what Sean's saying. But I think that he's done a pretty good job balancing it out. And what Rory comes back to, and we're going back to that quote from Rory earlier, where he said, it's hard for the players to wrap their mind around playing stroke play all season and having one event at the very end for the big money and having that be match play. So I think it's brilliant that Sean is kind of mixing both, starting with a stroke play in order to eliminate and come up with like a round of 16 and then move them into match play. I think the only thing out of his suggestion that I disagree with, that didn't quite sit right with me, was going to match play and then that Final Four going back to a stroke play event. I would rather see it just like, let's keep it really a little cleaner. I love the idea, 2 rounds of stroke play.
Yep.
Sets the final 16 and then go from there into a match play. And I think there's a lot of ways that you can still, if you want to retain, as we said before, having something to show for being the leader coming into that. Maybe that's like a buy for a guy like Scottie Scheffler. Yeah. There's still a way that you can do it that not unlike football where, if you win the division, you've got to buy. Sure. There's still something that you can give these guys without giving them such a lead. You're already giving an already dominant player such a lead that no one can catch them. So I thought it was good. I would just kind of end it with 2 days of match. I would do 2 days of stroke play, 2 days of match play, and I do think people would watch it. I think people would watch a heads-up match for first, a consolation match. I know I would watch it.
Yeah, I think that's where he kind of went towards the Sunday shootout, is because 2 days of match play. Maybe it's like you determine who those 4 people are going to be from match play. I get that. And then you have this 4-person battle on Sunday. And maybe that will, maybe in his thoughts, create that LIV drama we saw Sunday with Rahm and Niemann going like stroke for stroke. Because in a 4-person shootout, I mean, every stroke matters anyway, but it's going to be more intense, more edge of your seat. How like storylines are building. Like, imagine this Sunday we had a 4-man. Keegan's one of the guys. Like Cam Young's one of the guys fighting for a Ryder Cup. I mean, obviously, if he finishes 4th, he's probably going to get picked. But you see, there's so many other storylines.
Sure.
And like any of those 4 on Sunday, I think no matter who it is, you're going to have edge of your seat drama. So I kind of like what he did. It goes a little bit against your whole concept of like, if I can't explain it in a second or whatever.
Yeah.
But I like the change idea, and I think this is where I think PGA Tour they got their 4 majors locked up. That's safe and secure, governed by the bodies who do that. Golf is in a good place. With this, they can do anything they want. They can rewrite this script.
Oh, absolutely.
So like make it the most fun, work on it. Something like this could work.
And that's why I think I still think you get the same amount of eyeballs of having, even in his great example, talk about having like, imagine on Sunday, the 4 guys who are left, it's Scottie, Rory, Xander.
And you got like a villain. Yeah.
Right. But I do think that what you can do is the final Sunday can be still the top 4 guys, but keep it with the match play because it's built in. You have your
do
first place match with
Sure.
with whoever loses that match is second place, and you have your consolation match for third and fourth.
Yep.
And when you've got a pot that it's $40 million this year, I could see that with the way things are going, it could go easily to $50 million for next year.
Yep.
And have it be, as he said, a super, whatever he wants to call it, a branded event, whatever it may be, a 4-day event that plays out where it lands on Sunday. You've got 2 epic matches going on, and you're playing for first, second, third, and fourth, and maybe even fourth place still takes home, $5 million or whatever it may be. So these guys they're out there, they're playing for big money.
I like that.
I think it's a good way that you can kind of have those best of both worlds. So overall, I think it's a great suggestion. I want to see what you guys think. So weigh in the comments below. Let us know what you think about that, or if it's not the solution that you would have for either on the PGA Tour side or on the LIV side with their points problems that resulted with, you have Jon Rahm taking home the title without winning even once this year. So let us know your own thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll see you in the next one.